80% of the league are free agents. Like, everyone timed their contracts. Everybody signed one-year deals, and everyone timed their contracts to coincide with this new CBA. So literally, there's not even really any teams. There's only like 20% of the—
Ladies and gentlemen, pause for a second, because what just came out on national television changes everything. For weeks, we've been breaking down the WNBA's collective bargaining standoff. We've talked about the tension, the power plays, the ego clashes, but then ESPN's Ramona Shelburne went on the Rich Eisen show and revealed something that takes this situation to a whole different level. This isn't just a contract dispute anymore, it's full-blown chaos. Right now, nearly 80% of WNBA players are without a contract. Read that again. The overwhelming majority of the league's athletes do not currently have a team. That's not an accident. That's not bad luck. It was coordinated. Last season, players were encouraged to sign one-year deals. And the strategy was simple: let contracts expire all at once to pressure ownership into a massive new agreement. The message was, bet on yourself. When the Caitlin Clark revenue wave hits, we all strike at the same time and cash in together. On paper, it sounded bold. In reality, it's a high-stakes game of chicken. And here's the problem with that kind of gamble: eventually, someone has to blink. So far, nobody has. The fallout is staggering. The league is expanding to Toronto and Portland, two brand new franchises that should be celebrating a historic moment for women's basketball. Instead, both teams currently have 0 players on their rosters, not a single one. Why? Because there's no finalized collective bargaining agreement, no defined salary cap, no financial framework. You can't hold an expansion draft without knowing the rules of the system players are entering. You can't sign free agents when you don't even know what the payroll structure looks like. The entire league is essentially frozen, stuck in limbo because the foundation it operates on hasn't been agreed upon. And then comes the most revealing part of Shelburne's interview. The WNBA released its regular season schedule. At first glance, that seems like progress. Fans saw matchups: Indiana Fever versus New York Liberty on April 25th, and assumed the season was locked in. Not so fast. According to Shelburne, that schedule release wasn't a confident step forward. It was the league flinching, a signal that pressure is mounting, a move that looks stable on the surface but underneath screamed urgency. What? Because when you're announcing game dates without knowing which players will actually be under contract, that's not strength. That's desperation. This situation has escalated far beyond a normal labor negotiation. It's a standoff that's paralyzed expansion plans, stalled roster construction, and left the future of the season hanging in uncertainty. And if neither side decides to move soon, the consequences won't just be financial, they'll be historic.
We're getting close here, Rich. I mean, I thought it was interesting the league put out a schedule, because one of the pressure points I had been hearing was literally arena dates. You know how this goes. Like, if you don't have your dates on the schedule, they give them away to some concert. They give them away to some circus that comes to town, or they give them away to anybody else who wants to use the arena. Arenas cannot have open dates. And if you want those open dates, you gotta lock those in. So the league went forward with the idea of let's do the schedule, even though we don't even know who's on what team. And I thought that was a blink.
Did that really just happen? The WNBA reportedly rushed out a season schedule for teams that don't even have finalized rosters yet, just to make sure their arenas didn't get booked by other events. That's not satire. That's the reality. We're talking about the top women's basketball league in the world, the home of Caitlin Clark, Aja Wilson, and Sabrina Ionescu. And yet, behind the scenes, it's battling for arena dates against monster truck shows and traveling circus acts. Let that sink in. Because the collective bargaining negotiations are stalled, ownership felt pressure to put something on the calendar. Anything, so venues wouldn't fill those prime dates with other entertainment. With no finalized agreement, no clarity on revenue sharing, and major financial demands reportedly on the table, the league pushed out a schedule to hold its ground. That's not a sign of stability. That's damage control. The Players Association wants a structure closer to what NBA athletes receive: higher revenue splits, elevated salaries, first-class treatment across the board. And from their perspective, that's about respect and long-term growth. But here's the harsh contrast. NBA arenas don't risk losing dates because their league calendar is uncertain. No one is choosing between LeBron James and a weekend circus booking. That's the difference between aspiration and current leverage. You can aim for billion-dollar standards, but the financial foundation has to support it. The WNBA is still in a growth phase, still building consistent profitability, still fighting for mainstream footing. And when negotiations drag on long enough that arena availability becomes a storyline, it exposes just how fragile the situation really is, which brings us to the core issue. Rich Eisen, who has covered just about every major labor standoff in modern sports, cut through all the noise. He pointed directly at the one factor that has fundamentally shifted the spotlight onto this league. But because whether people want to admit it or not, there is a reason this moment feels bigger than previous disputes. There's a reason the stakes feel higher, and it has everything to do with the attention now surrounding the WNBA.
I don't mean to be flippant, but again, there's a golden goose that's getting more valuable here. And, you know, and stars, I mean, Juju Watkins is going to be healthy. Like, this is rubber meeting the road.
Rich Eisen summed it up in one sharp line. The WNBA is gambling with the most powerful asset it has ever had, Caitlin Clark. Right now, she's the engine driving this surge. The ratings spike, the sold-out arenas, the record-setting TV deals. Clark didn't just boost interest, she brought millions of new eyes to the sport. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those fans aren't emotionally tied to a league logo. They're tied to her, and that loyalty is fragile. If negotiations collapse into a lockout, if May arrives and Caitlin Clark isn't on national television pulling up from the logo, a huge portion of those new viewers won't stick around. They'll flip over to the NBA playoffs, they'll move on to something else. Casual sports fans don't wait. Once they drift away, it can take years, if ever, to bring them back. That's the risk. Why, there's a belief among some union leadership that the audience will simply sit tight while revenue battles play out behind closed doors, that the momentum will just pause and resume whenever an agreement is signed. But sports is entertainment, and entertainment runs on timing. When you're hot, you capitalize. If you shut everything down, that heat cools fast. The WNBA finally has cultural traction, but momentum doesn't last forever. Meanwhile, you've got long-tenured veterans telling the media they're the ones who built this growth, even though the league has struggled financially for decades. Now, with roughly 80% of players hitting free agency at once, the strategy is to apply maximum pressure. The problem? That pressure lands squarely on Clark's sophomore season, and the league's most critical window in years. Look at the calendar. Keon, the real breaking point isn't some distant date, it's March. Within weeks, the league needs to finalize a salary cap structure, conduct expansion drafts for Toronto and Portland, negotiate contracts for the majority of its players, hold the collegiate draft, and open training camps. That's months of front office work jammed into a frantic sprint. Even if a deal were signed tomorrow, the fallout would be chaotic. Imagine over 100 players scrambling for roster spots at the same time, general managers building entire teams in days, coaching staffs trying to create chemistry with players who just arrived. That kind of rushed assembly doesn't produce polished basketball in May. The on-court product will feel it. And who's guiding this strategy? According to reporting, union leadership includes Nneka Ogwumike, Brianna Stewart, and Nafisa Collier, established stars with significant financial security. They have endorsement portfolios, they have overseas income, they have additional ventures like Unrivaled supplementing their earnings. Missing a paycheck, while inconvenient, isn't catastrophic for them. But for others in the league, the margin is thinner. That's what makes this moment so volatile. The league is sitting on unprecedented momentum, fueled by a generational star and a wave of new fans. Yet at the same time, it's staring down a labor standoff that could disrupt everything just as it's finally breaking through. The stakes aren't theoretical anymore, they're immediate. Top stars can survive missing a few paychecks. But what about the rookie fighting just to make a roster? What about the fringe player whose entire yearly income depends on a minimum WNBA contract? For them, a delayed season isn't a headline, it's rent, bills, and survival. That's where this becomes uncomfortable. Union leadership is operating from a position of security. Many of the decision makers have endorsement deals, overseas salaries, and alternative revenue streams. They have cushions, but a large portion of the league doesn't. And yet the strategy on the table risks everyone equally. It's high-stakes poker, played with chips that don't belong to the people calling the bluffs. Adam Silver clearly recognizes the danger. His late-stage warning wasn't random. He understands what's at stake if this drags into March without resolution. Momentum like this doesn't wait around. The league finally has leverage, attention, and broadcast partners lined up, but television giants like Disney, Amazon, and NBC aren't investing billions into uncertainty. If there's a lockout and games aren't guaranteed, those contracts contain protections, renegotiation clauses, exit ramps. The players believe they're pushing for a larger slice of the pie. What they may not realize is that prolonged chaos could knock the entire pie off the table. This should have been simple. The league was handed a once-in-a-generation opportunity with Caitlin Clark's arrival. A surge in ratings, packed arenas, corporate interest. All that was required was a workable agreement, structured raises, and getting the product on the floor. Instead, pride entered the equation. There's a sense that some veterans didn't want a new financial era to feel like it was sparked by a rookie's popularity. So the pressure tactic became mass free agency, roughly 80% of the league hitting the market at once. Arena dates thrown into limbo, public uncertainty, a perception of instability broadcast nationwide, and now fans need to brace themselves for a serious possibility. The 2026 season could be delayed, or worse. The tone from the players' side isn't softening. Ownership, with the backing of Adam Silver, isn't likely to agree to terms they believe would put franchises in financial jeopardy. That leaves us watching two sides dig in, ambition colliding with economic limits. If this spirals and the season collapses, remember how we got here. It won't be because of Caitlin Clark. It won't be because fans stopped caring. It will be because leadership misjudged the moment, because ego outweighed timing. The opportunity is still there. The momentum is still alive. The league is sitting on something rare and valuable. But right now, uncertainty hangs over everything. Schedules have been announced. Arenas are being secured. Rosters remain unsettled. The clock is ticking, and the margin for error has never been thinner.